On paper, the Fujifilm X-E4 and X100V are almost identical. Both small and compact, same sensor, same I/O. But there are some differences that are a bit more subtle and don't show up on the spec sheet, and they make a world of difference. The two biggest differences are the price and the lenses. Right off the bat, the X100V retails for $1,400, but with the recent surge in popularity and lack of availability, it's selling for more than retail. The XE4 body only comes in at $850, and with the 27mm kit comes in at $1,050. The next biggest difference is that the XE4 is an interchangeable lens camera, whereas the X100V comes with the built-in 23mm f2 lens. You might view this as a limitation and wonder why the more expensive camera is stuck with a single focal length, while the cheaper camera has the ability to adapt to any situation with your choice of lens. But the way that I view it, the main attraction of both of these cameras is their small form factor, and the second you start attaching larger lenses to the XE4, it defeats the purpose of a compact camera if you're attaching a 70-200 lens to it. At that point, I'd just bring my full-frame cameras. I initially bought the XE4 because it was the cheapest in Fuji's lineup and offered most, if not all, of the performance of the more expensive models, and I didn't want to get invested in another camera ecosystem when I'm already heavily invested in Sony. Paired with the 27mm f2.8 lens, I thought it would be the perfect budget alternative to the X100V. But after using the X100V, I thought otherwise. I've never fallen in love with a camera so quickly. The limitation of the 23mm f2 lens is just so beautiful. I've always loved the 35mm focal length for everyday use, and the wider f2 aperture allowed for better low light performance and depth of field. And because it's built in, this lens protrudes less than on the XE4, making it feel smaller. And that's what Fuji's are all about. Feeling. The manual dials, aperture rings, and rangefinder look. These cameras let you truly connect with the photos you are capturing. The XE4 features an electronic viewfinder, whereas the X100V features a hybrid optical and electronic viewfinder that you can switch between. Personally, I keep it in the EVF mode because this is what I'm used to on all my other cameras, and I like seeing my exposure and the final image before I even take the photo. The viewfinder on the X100V is just so much nicer to look through. On the XE4, it was so small I barely ever raised it up to my eye, choosing to use the LCD for most of my shots. But with the X100V, I find myself using the viewfinder the majority of the time. The back LCD is the same on both cameras, but the XE4 has a little trick up its sleeve, being able to articulate 180 degrees for selfie and vlogging purposes. I think I've only used this feature once, it's not super important to me, but the X100V does only have the usual tilt screen. The rest of the differences are minor, but they start to add up. The X100V has a built-in flash, and while built-in flashes are notorious for being crappy, I actually love having this flash on here. You can brighten low light situations, obviously, but it gives you that cool retro point and shoot look to your photos, and having the option to get that creative look, or just light up a dark environment, enables you to get shots that are just not possible on the XE4. The dials are set up differently on the cameras. The XE4 has just the shutter dial, whereas the X100V has the shutter and ISO built into a single dial, and you can change between them by lifting that dial up. I personally prefer this method because I don't like having to press this button on the XE4 and scroll through the screen just to adjust my ISO. I love being able to just twist a dial and quickly get my exposure where I want it. The X100V is also capable of becoming weather sealed as long as you put a filter in front of the lens with the optional lens adapter. And it just has a slightly higher build quality overall compared to the XE4. It has a nice heft to it in the hand. The shutter on these cameras is vastly different and something that genuinely surprised me. The X100V features a leaf shutter, which is so quiet. It's so quiet, in fact, that Fuji made an artificial shutter sound just so you could hear when you're taking a picture. If you turn this sound off, this is what it sounds like. I turned it off and I absolutely love it. I feel so stealthy when taking photos. The XE4, on the other hand, has a traditional curtain shutter. The X100V also features a built-in ND filter, which is unheard of. Usually that kind of feature is reserved for video-focused, high-end cinema cameras, and yet this camera has it. I don't really shoot video on the X100V, but the fact that this ND filter is built in, meaning that I don't have to bring additional filters with me, it's nice knowing that I could shoot video outdoors in broad daylight if I wanted to. I have found myself using the ND filter on bright days where I want to shoot wide open at f2, and even at the max shutter of 4000, it was still too bright. Having the ND filter that I could turn on with the switch of a button is such a convenient feature to have, and now that I've experienced it, I want it on every camera. Overall, you can't go wrong with either of these cameras. They are so similar and they share so much of their DNA. And yet, they both have a very unique and different shooting experience. I'm not here to say that one camera is better than the other. And that's the beauty of Fuji. You don't have to pick a body based on feature set. You can choose a body that speaks to you and inspires you to go out and shoot. And I absolutely